Attackers are only getting more proficient, so how can you proactively adapt your cybersecurity strategy? Core Security by Fortra helps you uncover and prioritize the risks that pose the biggest threat to your organization. Core Impact is a penetration testing tool that safely finds and exploits vulnerabilities using the same techniques as attackers. You can conduct advanced pen tests with ease using certified exploits and automation. Take your engagements further by pairing with our red teaming tools from Cobalt Strike and Outflank. Learn more at www.securityweekly.com/core security. Welcome back to Enterprise Security Weekly. Do you have a specific guest or topic that you want us to cover in one of the shows? Submit your suggestions for guests by visiting securityweekly.com/guests and completing the form. We review suggestions monthly and will reach out to you once reviewed. And I have cleared out that queue, so it is empty. Go ahead and fill it up. We get a lot of good guest suggestions that way. All right, now time for the news. You can go to securityweekly.com/ESW307 if you want to follow along as we go through the news. There, we took a week off last week, and the week before that. So to make room to talk about Space Rogue and his new book release. It was just too perfect. It was we were able to have him on right on the day that book was released. So we decided not to do news that week. Then we had a holiday week. And so now we've got 3 weeks worth of stuff. We got 48 items. So make sure you check out securityweekly.com/ESW307. We will not get to all of these. And there's some really, really good ones in the show notes here. So kicking off, I thought for sure that Wiz was going to be on the top of the funding list this week, but it seems that Google spinoff Sandbox AQ, which is apparently post-quantum cryptography startup that's been spun out of Google, has hit the top of the list with a $500 million, what is it, a seed? What is this?
$500 million seed.
Just spending money just to... so nobody starves.
Oh my gosh, that's so wild. When I saw the news come through for Wiz 300 at 10 billion valuation, I was positive that's going to be the biggest one of the year. I was like, there's no way, like in this down market. And then this guy pops up for quantum of all things.
The nerve.
The nerve, you're right. I don't even understand quantum. I'm sorry. I'm either really stupid, which is quite probable, or this stuff is just way beyond me. I just don't understand quantum. We need to do a show on quantum.
I have one planned. I've actually already picked the interviews. We're going to have an interview with somebody to just explain quantum computing in general to us. What can it do? What can it do? And then we're going to have another guest explain what quantum means to security. And from what I've gathered so far from doing my research here, and I'm really looking forward to scheduling those guests and having them on, is for some cryptography, it's a big deal. For other cryptography, it's not. And I think it's symmetric versus asymmetric. I go any deeper, I'm way out of my depth. So we'll have to have some experts.
My understanding
come on.
is the ones that have one-way hash algorithms, one-way trapdoor algorithms, I think. And please, I'm sure there's some audience member out there who's going to be like, Tyler, you're an idiot, and send me comments. Please go ahead. But I think it's the ones that have the one-way trapdoor, the single direction functions that you have to really brute force in a certain way that are quantum at risk with quantum. But again, I don't understand quantum computing even at the fundamental levels of even what it is. I would love to get down to that level of analysis, because Google spinning off, or Alphabet spinning off a $500 million seed-backed cyber quantum company is something I should understand. I either should understand it, or it's so insane that no one will ever understand it.
Well, I mean, it's good that they're getting into it now before quantum computers get to the level to where, because IBM is, I think they're at like 48 qubits now, and they're expecting thousands of qubits in the near future. So this stuff is sounds like it's going to take off pretty quick. It's going to advance pretty quick. So we might be there before anybody thinks. Kind of like what happened with AI. Like, most of us weren't really tracking AI.
AI didn't take off quick, Adrian. Let's be real about AI. AI was here for 10 years before it all of a sudden took off quickly.
Right, but I don't think anybody was prepared for what ChatGPT could do when they opened that up. Like that was the first service to go from like 0 to 100 million people using it in like 3 months or something like that. I think it took Facebook like 3 years to do that, or 10 years. Yeah, I forget what it was.
But again, how many years of useless, failed AI experiments that couldn't figure out how to apply themselves in any useful way had to happen for over a decade or more for that moment of clarity. I wonder if quantum, in its fundamental, whatever the hell it is, state that I don't understand, is a similar problem where it's just going to need to marinate for a decade or longer before we have the aha moment.
Well, the great thing about the great thing about planning a episode on quantum, and it means that because of quantum theory, because we plan it, then it already happens. So I think that'll work out well for us, Adrian.
Nice.
I love it.
Nicely played. Nicely played.
So we 100% have to talk about Wiz, though, about the raise that is Wiz, the $300 million on $10 billion valuation. We can't just skip that for quantum discussion, but holy smokes, that raise blew my mind this week. What's your take on it, Adrian?
Yeah, so I've been talking about this a lot because so this is a company extremely rare. Shared their revenue number last August, said they were already to $100 million ARR, which is nuts considering that they came out of stealth like not long ago. I think this is one of these where we were talking about how do you even hire that many employees that quick? How do you go from 67 employees to 650 in a year? Like, I mean, that's a huge challenge in itself, just finding that much talent and bringing them on board. But so these are the same folks who sold Adalom for a pretty good $320 million to Microsoft. So they've got a solid background. And rumor is they will hit 200 million ARR at some point this year. But with a $10 billion valuation, that's still 50x. That's still a big number.
Yeah, so you know how the valuations work, right? It's absolute value and growth. So what's super crazy here is that, to see that kind of growth rate, you're usually at 5, 10, 15 million if you have a great company. To see that kind of year over year double or triple growth rate. So what's just absolutely mind-blowing and staggering is 0 to 100 in 18 months or whatever it was, right? August, or something like that. And then August of 22 to potentially March of 2023. Could they have 50% it again maybe already? Like then you're talking 100, a doubling, 200% growth, a doubling potentially this year or more on $100 million base. It's staggering.
They'd have to justify this. Yeah.
Yeah, that's staggering to have that kind of growth on that kind of base. Usually you start pushing 100 million, 150 million on the base number, and your growth is shrunk down to, high single digits, 10, 15%. You're killing it. You're killing it at 15% year over year growth at 150 million ARR. For them to be doubling is just unheard of. I can't believe that at some point they've got to tap that market. They've got to get to the end of that TAM. And I just wonder when that's going to happen. Stuff will have to slow down for them.
Yeah, I mean, cloud is huge. I don't know what that TAM looks like, but public cloud is somewhere up in like 250, 300 billion in spending or revenue in that market. So, the market's big enough. Certainly, I think for what they're looking for, but I wonder how much of that market they've got to claim. Like a third of it, to be able to hit these numbers. And founded in January 2020, they are barely 3 years old.
Barely 3 years old, and they say if a typical company does 1 million, 6 million, 15 million, that's a phenomenal first 2 to 3 years.
Yeah, they're not doing that. It's
no order of magnitude
above that. Yeah, crazy stuff. So that's the big one today. Certainly, Wiz is the one to watch. I think at that point, like at this point, what's next? They're talking IPO. I joked, I think, in the intro that they're too big to buy, but they may be too big to buy. In fact, we saw. Yeah, so not security related, but Figma. It looks like the U.S. government is with the goal of antitrust is going to try and block the Adobe acquisition of Figma, which was a $20 billion acquisition, which is double what we're talking about Wiz being valued at here. But yeah, you're getting into antitrust territory, with acquisitions this large. I think the biggest one we've ever seen was the Activision Microsoft deal, which I still don't think has gone through yet.
That's still
at
not
like
done.
60 something billion. It was a huge one.
Yeah, and that's still not done. It too got ripped up and destroyed by antitrust issues. I don't know if it'll ever go through. But yeah, I see that this has to be an IPO. And what's interesting is their timing could be perfectly spot on when it really comes down to it. Run this thing for another year, maybe year and a half. Hopefully by that point, the IPO doors and windows reopen and they're able to just get this thing liquidated publicly.
Yeah, timing is so important here. And there's some other markets where I'm looking at tracking companies where I'm really cringing. I'm really thinking, these guys went too big. They swung too big, and it might be a miss for them. But a lot of that depends on what the market does and how quickly it comes back.
And it also just depends on whether you can go from zero to 100 million in 18 months.
Yeah, that's crazy. All right, Deepwatch is on here also. I'm still kind of scratching my head at services organizations being funded like software startups. But Deepwatch, MDR, we've seen a bunch of other ones here. Arctic Wolf raising a ton of traditional VC money based on what is effectively a services organization. But I guess they figured out how to to really kind of expand that services organization where they can scale like a software company, even though it's humans, butts and seats that are providing the service.
Yeah, it all comes down to efficiencies and margin, right? I mean, you get a better multiple for a product because your margins are through the roof. You're going to get a better multiple for a pure SaaS software product than you will a hardware product. And you'll get a better multiple for a hardware product than you will a human-derived capital product. It's all because of the margin levels.
And we talked about it in both of our previous interviews, just progressively putting more and more automation into place where it makes sense to put automation. And you can realize those kinds of margins with a business like this.
Yep, and you realize
but you got to
exit, you get the multiple.
You got to be aggressive though. Like I imagine all these MDR firms are looking real hard at how they can use ChatGPT.
Oh, I'm sure. Yeah.
So this is a big seed funding. Number 4, $53 million in seed funding for passwordless authentication and user management platform. Identity management firms have been known to get big, to IPO. We've got Okta. We've got a lot of large organizations. Identity is a really big market. So I can see it, but yeah, it looks like somebody's trying to grow this one kind of like Wiz here, where they're looking to get it to market really quick.
So Wiz came out of stealth with $100 million in funding, if I recall correctly. And at the time, I remember thinking, what? 100 million in funding? Like, why? That makes no sense.
They had 600 million within 18 months.
Yeah, so it clearly worked for them, but I think anybody that tries to copy that model has a 99.999% chance of failure. So please don't go out and over invest in your companies. That era is long behind us.
Time will tell. We'll see how it goes.
I also think with this market, it's a good market. It's time for the market to explode, but there are so many companies now that are in this space that I think it's going to be hard for any new entrants unless they're doing something radically different. And I only got a little bit of time to browse through all of these today, but it doesn't look like they're doing something that radically different. So I think it's going to be hard for some of these new entrants to really make up that difference, especially if they're just raising 53 million is huge for seed.
Well, the point of raising that much money is, the only reason you raise that much money is if you need it to actually make the physical item that you're selling, which in the case of software you do not, or you believe it's a race to a single winner market. And if you can show that it's truly like a winner take all game, it is a winner take all zero sum game, then yeah, overinvest, run it over. That's what Wiz has essentially done. Orca's kind of number 2 in that space and doing amazingly well, by the way. I heard their numbers recently, and I can't repeat them, but I heard those numbers recently and I was amazed at the growth. And the person I was talking to was depressed because they weren't Wiz. And their numbers were through the charts amazing. And I just couldn't believe it. So I think the only time that you should be taking that much funding pre-seed is when you know for a fact 100% that it's a single winner market and you need to dominate it right out of the gate, or you will lose and go to zero.
I just don't see that happening here.
No, I don't see it happening in any cyber. It technically shouldn't have happened to Wiz. I don't know why it really happened in that market. Or maybe that market is just so astronomically large that they can run at it super hard and attempt to take the whole thing over and still leave room for Orca and Aqua and number 2 and 3 to live.
Yeah.
I think Adrian, there. Oh, you're on mute or something, buddy. You're just mumbling to yourself.
Yeah, sorry about that. Yeah, I was just looking on LinkedIn at Wiz's hiring growth, and they didn't show up on my layoffs list, but it's entirely possible that they did some layoffs, but we're still hiring so much that the layoffs were just buried. But yeah, I don't see a dip in the total employee count, but it does look like they've at least flattened. So they're, for the last month. It doesn't look like they've hired any for the last month, but they're also not dropping. They're at 734 employees, which is insane for a company that's barely 3 years old.
Yeah. So back to Dscope, it seems to be some kind of an authentication, passwordless authentication for applications that you're building, is the way I understand it, which is going to be neat to see how that works out. I think that's been an area that multiple companies have tried to figure out, put this little component in there and everybody can authenticate it, kind of thing. And I think if they solve that problem and truly get rid of passwords for applications that we build in a way that's easy to use and secure and safe for the user base, it is a massive problem. So I understand why they could have sold the vision. The question is, do you need that much money to run over the market at the end of the day, or can you build it in a little bit healthier way? Feels like they're taking the big shot. They're going for the moonshot. So good luck to them, and I hope they do well.
Which was so they're competing directly with Auth0 here, which Okta picked up. I'm trying to remember what the acquisition price was for Auth0.
Was that one?
6.5 billion.
Yeah, I was gonna say it's in the billions.
So that's what these guys are aiming at here.
Yeah, but Auth0 years ago and did what they did. So, what's the reinvention? What makes them better than Okta?
Well, it's not passwordless, not doing passwordless necessarily.
Wow.
It depends what you call passwordless, because Auth0 does do single sign-on, but they charge extra for doing SAML. So if you can disrupt that, that's something I've heard a lot of people complain about. People complain about companies charging extra for security features, but the charge doing it as well. So it's tough not to those extra costs.
Speaking of charging for extra security features, you guys catch our buddy Elon Musk over there charging for two-factor?
Well, no, charging for shitty two-factor. So I'm backing this because it's trying to disincentivize using SMS two-factor and to move to more secure factors. So if you're going to do that, like, that's not terrible, I don't think.
So I'm gonna take the other side of that. That's like saying, I didn't have an analogy prepared, but I'm sure there's some kind of analogy with airbags or car crashes and stuff like that. But listen, I would be totally fine if everybody on Twitter actually did the basic 2FA with the text messaging. Sure, it can be spoofed. Yes, it can be captured, but it raises the bar so significantly. You cannot charge for that. To me, I think he's smoking something to go charge for that.
Yeah, and yeah, so when you meet reality there, yes, it's good to incentivize less secure options, but if we're talking about any MFA is better than no MFA, and the friction to go to other MFA options is so great that people just aren't going to do it.
That's what's going to.
We could talk about people just disabling MFA altogether and just going with username and password, nothing else.
And I think the average person on Twitter, not the security or not the security world that we live in, but the average person, and not the celebrity that's highly targeted, but the average person, they have their chances of even turning on the basic one was slim to none. You put the friction of having to put Duo or something else on their phone too, forget it. They'd just be like, forget it. Twitter's not that important to me. I'm just not going to do it. I'll go baseless. So you're actually disincentivizing across the board people to use security in your environment by charging for that low-level security. And the reason they're doing it, the rumor I heard was to lower costs, because it costs money for them to send text messages. So they're like, let's get rid of text messages everywhere within the app that sends text messages, get rid of it. Well, in this case, they couldn't get rid of it because it was a security service. So they're like, great, we'll just charge for it so we can make the money back at least.
No, that absolutely tracks with the kind of changes that Elon's been making, and trying to lower the Twilio bill. I think totally fits into that model
at the expense of the security of their users, which I think he's smoking something. And as a matter of fact, I put out an article recently in my newsletter with a photo of him smoking something right at the top.
Yep. No, you have a strong argument there. Definitely have a strong. Yeah. But yeah, no, it's a good point. Like using SMS services, that's yet again, so that's where I think Dscope could differentiate here from Zero and Okta in not charging for something that the rest of the industry is charging for and tends to pass on to customers. So yeah, there's an opportunity here as well. Like if you're using Twilio, if you're using what's built into AWS, sending an SMS message is going to cost money. But using TOTP, just token codes, like with Google Authenticator or Authy or something like that. I think you can just do that with a library. You don't need a third-party service to do that. So yeah.
Wish them the best, that's for sure.
Another thing where time will tell. Like we just got to wait and see how it all falls out to see if it blows up in their faces, or if
I don't think at the end of the day. I think at the end. Yeah, no, I agree. I think at the end of the day, whenever I see a new company that says, "Hey, we're going to get rid of the password," my heart just, please win, please win. I don't need to know anything more. Just win.
Yep. Hope for the best. For here, kind of rapid fire through PayPal leads. Oh, is that me?
Yeah, you were cutting out. So while you're looking at that, I'll take the lead on this one. On the PayPal co-leads a $20 million seed funding for on-chain risk optimizer Chaos Labs. So other than the cool name Chaos Labs, like that's a pretty badass name. I'm very interested in trying to figure out what an automated risk management platform at Chaos Labs actually does.
The name is the only reason I included it. Most of the web and blockchain stuff I don't include. To be Yeah.
It's the only thing that caught me out of the whole intro that I was like, that's pretty cool. The rest of it, I was like, blah, blah, wah, 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 wah. I just heard the Charlie Brown sound.
Well, I read this one part of the article, which I think makes this super clear. It says the official website states that Chaos Labs Risk Suite can help protect DeFi protocols through optimized risk and capital efficiency, streamlined risk assessments, and streamlined risk assessments.
It says it twice
That's
in the
very
article.
helpful.
Yeah, that's what it says. So I think that says it right there.
I had lunch with somebody today that said, you know what, Tyler, sometimes I turn on ESW and I jump to the part where all you guys do is make fun of the buzzwords because that's my favorite part.
It's so easy to do.
Well, it's hard to do anything else. Like when we don't understand what they're trying to say, what do we have left but to make fun of it? And it's not like we're completely ignorant about this stuff. Like it's just a style of writing press releases, which is why we did a whole segment just on how to write good press releases, like a year or two ago.
When he told me that he skips through the rest of ESW to get to that part, I wasn't sure if I should be offended or happy, but we'll figure that out.
It's definitely fun. It's fun for us also to go through this stuff. So yeah, I'm just going to kind of rapid fire through these because there's a ton more funding and there's more interesting stuff I want to get to. So a company called Matomic raises $20 million to protect sensitive data in SaaS applications. I don't know if that's considered DSPM or not. Didn't have time to dive too deep into that. Entitle launches with $15 million in seed funding to bake security into permissions management. Riot prepares your team against highly sophisticated cyber attacks. I think this is like an MDR or MSSP with a $12 million Series A based in France, but funded by a San Francisco VC. So interesting to see some of these U.S. funding sources funding European startups. It's very interesting.
The Riot one is pretty interesting because it's actually an educational product that's around security awareness training. But then they are incorporating a chatbot called Albert, and so they're using AI to fight AI. So here we go. We can throw in our ChatGPT jokes on this one.
We can also throw in our Clippy jokes too. It's not like
yeah.
Clippy.
Yeah, it looks like they're going for an Albert Einstein likeness there, except he's got an earring in one ear. So it's kind of like a hipster Albert Einstein.
Hipster Albert. I love it. I love it. But it feels very Clippy to me. If you guys remember Clippy, when he used to come up and suggest you do the Microsoft Clippy thing. So it's like, all right. Well, I hope it doesn't go the way of Clippy.
With everybody, with all the AI going on, all the chatbots going on, Clippy comes up constantly. Is Microsoft going to bring Clippy back? They're adding AI to Word again. Is Clippy going to be? Yeah. The latest John Oliver, I think, even had a somewhat adult-themed Clippy segment.
Love it.
Yeah, it's. I'm not going to go into any more details than that. CyberSmart raises 12.8 million pounds in Series B funding. I forget what they do. SendMark secures $7 million Series A funding for email and domain security protection. So nothing that really jumps out at me here. VulnCheck raises 3.2 million for vulnerability prioritization. That's already a pretty deep market. That's a pretty late entry into a market that already has late entries, like Nucleus Sec. I think is the last one I've seen enter that market. That's been really interesting to me. Nucleus.
I wonder though. There's a couple things there. There's an opportunity here, and I don't know if VulnCheck is doing this. I like VulnCheck. I know a couple of the devs. I know the founder well. They've been bootstrapped for a while. They just took in their first round of funding. They've been around for a couple of years before taking in funding. I think there's an opportunity in this space, particularly kind of this correlative vulnerability analysis space or vulnerability intelligence, exploit intelligence, vuln prioritization market, where, God forbid, here I'm going to bring it up, but we use contextual AI or potentially even generative AI to look at the universe of what you have in your world to determine whether risks are real or not given your particular threat models. And I don't know if that's what VulnCheck is doing, but I think there is opportunity in that market that they're playing in for a much smarter version of prioritization based on what you actually have, including things like mitigating factors, et cetera, but not relying on you to hand enter that data or you to mentally do the gymnastics of whether we care about a particular vuln, but actively looking at what's in the environment, what's in your world, and pulling that data into a smart decision algorithm.
Yeah.
I think, the number one thing that I hear in my day job is, this is great. A lot of companies surface vulnerabilities. What the hell do I do about them? Everything is listed based on data that's maybe not actionable, maybe not relevant, or there are just too many of these high and critical. So, people are lost. Even if you give them information, it's not necessarily appropriate for their environment, and it's not helping. The more data we give them is not helping. It's all about, actually, Adrian said this today, so I'm totally going to steal what you said on a call we had earlier. It's all about reducing the data to focus in, and not a lot of tools are doing that. And not a lot of people can manage that, certainly not manually.
Yeah, honestly, these days, EPSS is the most recent exciting thing I've seen in this space, which was a scoring system that was developed between Rand and folks at Scientia Labs, like Jay over there, and Kenna Security. And for any CVE out there, like they have an API where you can just hit it and it'll tell you the score, and it's just between 0 and 1. Is it likely for an exploit to be created for this or unlikely? And then combine that with some of your internal stuff, like the contextual information. Is this exposed to the public internet? Is it high asset criticality level, stuff like that? Like, I don't think it gets any more magic than that. Like, those are the important things to take into account. Is it going to be exploited? And is it something I care about is basically what it bakes down to. And I'm not sure that there's a whole lot more to be done in this space. Like, beyond that, it's just going to be hard. Like, you still have to have humans tell you the context. Is this exposed to the public internet? I'm still not seeing anything that makes that easy to answer without a human doing that. What's the criticality of this asset? I've not seen any big leaps taken there. It's still a human saying, yes, this has critical data on it, or this is a critical system that we can't live without. Still a person. I
think there's a lot of systems now that are starting to come around, Adrian, that are providing that context. Specifically the context, like the two things you mentioned, the contextual awareness of, is this internet accessible? That's actually programmatically achievable very easily just by looking at configuration states of the network path.
Right.
And what was the other one you provided too? I can't remember what it was now, but it also had a relatively straightforward kind of contextual awareness. The hard part is getting access to all that context and then making the smart decision based on that context. And I think that is, when it comes to AI in security, not security of AI, but AI in our security systems that we use, that's where a lot of AI and the intelligence is going to start to be, a real game changer in cybersecurity as we take breadth of context in to augment the decisions that we're already making in our traditional security tooling.
Yeah, it just, you get into a lot of niche cases, especially once you start getting into larger companies where, yes, that asset has a routable IP address and maybe it is internet accessible on this port, but it's not on these other ports. So you run into these issues where, and again, yes, programmatically, you can get all the information on that. You can read the AWS ACLs, but it's a bunch of extra work to go get that. I'm not seeing a lot of companies doing that yet. I think we can get there, but then, yeah, the other big leap there is just to get the integration in place, the other people you work with to get access to that configuration data.
Yeah, I think luckily computers are good at two things: collecting data and crunching data. And that's the exact two problems you've identified. And by default, compute is good at that. So it will eventually be solved. Not today, maybe not tomorrow, but it'll be.
It's just the people screwing it up. You got to get the people out of the way.
Damn people, get rid of all of them. Don't ask AI. I'm sure they'll eventually suggest killing off all the people too. Don't worry.
I love that Jim got into the politics. Like, look, you got to have somebody in your pocket. Yeah, it's just it's something and he didn't say in your pocket, but yeah, I mean, you got to have somebody on your side, and it's one of these things where you want to integrate with somebody's system. Like, you got to convince them that it's worth it for them. Like, what's the benefit for them? What do they get out of the relationship? All right. Any of the other fundings anybody wants to talk about before jumping to acquisitions?
Let's hit the acquisitions. Let's go.
Yeah. So very early acquisition. I don't think Canonic and very different from Canonical, the company behind Ubuntu. Canonic Security was picked up by Zscaler here. I actually looked for public filings. There's no information on what the deal size was, but App Total is the product from Canonic here. The company was still at the seed stage, I think. I don't think they had quite gotten to the Series A stage, but not quite SaaS security. Like, at a glance, you would think it's SaaS security, but it's more of like a forensic tool, like an investigation tool where you can take any kind of Chrome extension or integration with your Google Workspace, Office 365 or something like that, and you can drop it into this like search engine that AppTotal has, and they'll tell you if they're like what the product's doing and the permissions it's asking for, and whether or not it's asking for way more permissions than it actually needs. Which I saw a research report a couple months ago on this that said something like 85 or 90% of these ask for way more permissions than they need. Like maybe it's a tool that puts like like Calendly, like it puts something on your calendar for you, but for some reason it's asking for full access to Google Drive and all your Gmail.
Yeah, but that was the same problem that we had in mobile early on, mobile apps, right? They were all over permission too.
Yep. Except for BlackBerry. BlackBerry had that nailed. They just screwed up everything else.
That's true.
Yep. Yeah, they really were way ahead of their time in really the nuances and nitpicks of permissions over, microphone, camera, hardware features, different data stores and stuff like that. But just insisted nobody would want to use a smartphone without a hardware keyboard. And man, did they get that wrong.
Yeah. The only other thing that really turns me off about this too, and one reason why I think that they had to have gotten acquired instead of doing well long term, was that one of the founders uses a Dvorak keyboard. Total fail.
I thought that was hilarious. That was in his Crunchbase bio.
That's the right place for that. Yeah. I mean, that, and I put out like to bake cookies in my LinkedIn bio too. Same thing.
I mean, at least he picked a decent composer. What if he had picked like John Cage or something?
Right, but not just the keyboard layout, but that just happens to collision with a classical composer's name.
I don't know where to take that. I'm sorry. That's just really wrong.
Yeah.
Sorry, I had to make a bad joke.
Yeah, I know. No. That's what made it a good joke, is that it was so bad, Katie.
Thank you. That was coming from you, Tyler. That's high praise.
I'm great at bad jokes. I'm the king of bad jokes.
Appreciated. Yeah, Boris is he's a friend of mine. Met him when he was the CTO for FireLayers, which got acquired by Proofpoint. So yeah, great that they had an exit here. Curious about what the exit was like, but in this market, I have to assume it was nothing crazy, no 30 or 50x here, but good to have any kind of exit in this market's good, right?
Right.
Maybe. Let's see. So we talked about Siren. I don't want to dwell on that too much, but yeah, Siren is shut down, liquidated, kind of bankruptcy. That's I think it's chapter 12. That's liquidation. Chapter 7 is the restructuring, where you try and keep the business running. But this is the shut it down, sell off the assets. Let's see what kind of value we can give investors and lien holders out of this. Moving on, I noticed that. So I was just looking at the performance of some of the other security companies that went public via SPAC. It doesn't look great for any of them. I saw this story saying there are a ton of companies that went IPO via SPAC, ending in a pile of bankruptcies. So Siren is not one of those. Siren had been around for a long time. But IronNet and ZeroFox are two companies that look like they're struggling right now in the public market and went public via SPACs.
Yes. Yeah. I mean, SPAC stuff's it's just the first to get smashed. When you didn't do any due diligence on bringing out the companies into a public universe, and then you get thrust right into the seventh layer of Dante's Inferno as the market destroys around you. It's a tough spot to come back from. And they have to quickly get to, or at least show a path very quickly to get to profitability. And if you don't have that in the bag because you didn't do all the diligence on IPO the way you should have to go IPO, you're in deep trouble. And that's why the SPACs are all getting ripped up.
Any bets on whether we hear Chamath Palihapitiya comment on this?
Yeah, I did recently read a piece about the former SPAC king, or the current, what they used to call him the SPAC king. But the article's funny. One or two of them, and I can't remember which ones, paid for him, I believe, paid for everything of all the other losses. So, really? Like the VC game, if you get one or two that are super hyper successful, you just write off the other losses. But the problem with that is you don't really realize. I'm sure he did realize, but he didn't. He doesn't really talk about the fact that you're destroying hundreds and thousands of people's lives that are in these companies that you are now bringing public prematurely and then having ripped out from underneath them, right? Sure, you made profitability because you hit one or two that were hyper successful, while the other 8 of the 10 you brought out died, right? So he doesn't talk about that part of it very often.
But is he barely on the right side of breaking even, or is he like 100x on those other two?
No, he's barely on the right side of breaking even. I don't believe he lost his shirt, is what I'm getting at. At least that's what the article said.
Yeah, not looking like SPACs were a great idea in hindsight.
No, when you posted this, I did a little bit of research just to figure out what it looked like at a holistic level. And just the more I dug, the more time I spent, the more searches I did, the more horrifying it got. And I mean, I guess some would say that who are in favor of SPACs, that it was an attempt to try something to make everybody more successful, to make everybody more money, to speed up the market, by taking away the red tape, the whole, we don't like bureaucracy argument there. And I get it, but it's just horrifying, as Tyler said, that people didn't put enough thought into it. It was a get-rich-quick scheme, and we've never seen in history where that really works out in the long run for a lot of people. And so I'm not sure why this was even allowed to happen. I'm not necessarily in favor of regulating everything for everybody, but somebody should have seen this, because it really did. It made a lot of promises to a lot of people who, especially the little guy, is really hurting because of this right now.
So what you're saying is removing guardrails can be problematic, right?
Yeah.
They might be there for a reason.
Guardrails might be there for a reason. I mean, hey, when they mandated seatbelts all those years ago, yes, I'm old, I was like, nobody can tell me. And then I started reading the statistics, and I'm like, well, you know what? I was being an idiot. Maybe I should wear my freaking seatbelt. And now I would never, ever get in a car without a seatbelt. So right. You can, shake your fist at the clouds and yell all you want, but these things are there for a reason. And somebody allowed these SPACs to run rampant, and, some people listening might say, well, okay, a lot of cybersecurity companies fail, or a lot of companies fail. Well, yeah, that's true. But there are people on the other side of it who are, they need their rent or their mortgage. They need food. They need shoes on their feet. And if you're making all of these promises to them, well, maybe they were naive too, but you're still ruining lives.
And in the vein of, talking about, sacrificing jobs and things like that, there was an interesting, number 25 is an interesting article from a Stanford professor talking about how all these layoffs are really just triggered by copycat behavior rather than, something that these companies needed to do. It's more about sending the signal that, hey, we're trying to manage our burn. We're looking out for, the long-term health of the company when, I guess he's suggesting here it's more about looking like you're doing the right thing than doing what's actually right for the company.
Yeah, I definitely have some thoughts on this one. I think that it's exactly right. There's a significant amount of herd mentality out there, right? It's that concept of, well, if everybody's doing it, there's got to be a reason, and I'm going to do the same thing. And so I think there's certainly a herd mentality problem where, hey, all these layoffs are occurring, we better do the same thing. I also think there's a bit of a factor here where it may not just be pure copycat behavior, but also idealistic behavior, let's call it, where, hey, Elon's killing people off, or insert big name security company leader X is laying off a bunch of people. Well, they're smart. They're billionaires and made tons of money. They're wicked smart. I better do what they're doing, right? So I think there's copycat behavior. I think there's idol worship behavior. But then simultaneously, when you look at what's going on in the market, it's de-risking. It's an intentional smart de-risking to your business, which makes the layoff smart. And in some ways, in a truly cold-blooded way, hey, here's the time if you want to lay off 10% of your staff that may not be very good at what they're doing, that you can blame it on somebody else. And now you can do a layoff and not feel bad about it as a leader, right? I think there's some of that in there too. I think it's all of it together. I would not say it's just copycat behavior.
I would
I think there's
also
a
add
bunch
to
of
that.
do something as well. It's like people are looking to the company, shareholders, et cetera. Do something. We need to do something to make sure that we are prepared for what might happen. But the article itself even says in many instances, layoffs don't increase stock prices or cut costs. And then there's talking about there's other consequences around that, such as cost of severance, loss of productivity, as well as a brand issue where that company was seen as doing layoffs. Maybe I, as a good worker, may not want to go and work there. Sorry, Katie, go ahead.
No, you actually touched on something I was going to say, which is I think there are two other factors at play in addition to what you said and what Tyler said. It's a reputation thing. Companies want to protect their brand, so they don't want to look like maybe they're doing something out of the ordinary, and they also don't want to look like they're bucking any trends. So, all these other companies are doing it. Hey, we can maybe figure out a way to cut costs here and not look like the bad guy. So they're not actually thinking about what's right for the business because they're not actually doing the calculations to figure out if it's right for their business, which is the second factor that comes in, which is laziness. I think they are just following a lot of companies, not all of them, certainly. There are a lot of smart people out there too, but some companies are just being lazy and saying, well, hey, cutting people will save us costs. And then they don't do the actual calculation. They don't think about it, what they're losing, what they have to pay out, how they have to follow up. Somebody like Elon Musk, I will not agree that he is smart, but he doesn't care. He doesn't give a shit about his workers, and he doesn't care what it costs. He wants to lay people off, and he wants to be seen as the alpha dog. But when it comes to real businesses that are actually run well, you have to say, all right, what's the cost benefit here? What's the short-term effect going to be? What's the long-term effect going to be? And I think there are a lot of people who are taking the quick route by saying, these other companies are doing it, and not doing the individual cost calculation, just like we talk about with risk. They're not doing the individual risk calculation because it's too hard. They're relying on some tool to tell them. And in this case, the tool is public sentiment.
Yeah, you're 100% right on that. And the whole Elon thing really throws me off because people are like, well, he's axing what percent of Twitter or whatever the layoffs that he's involved with are doing. But you got to understand, the guy literally has more money than anything. And a lot of problems in business can be solved by shoveling more money at it. A lot of problems, whether you make that money by having a good business that generates a lot of revenue, giving you more money to operate, or like him, you got pockets so deep, you just put another 100 million in and fix the problem. So people don't understand that your business is different than Twitter and Tesla. Your business is your business, and you don't have hundreds of millions of dollars in your pocket to just put on the table if your culture gets ruined by destroying, by laying people off the way he laid it off and kills the culture. Well, guess what? $100 million to all of his employees spread out to hire a bunch of new people and maybe give a bunch of people raises afterward will sure fix that problem for him, or hopefully, right? But my point is, like, your company is different than all of the other companies, and you can't just follow herd mentality, which is what I think the key point of this article really is trying to bring up.
There's another Elon conundrum that leaders or executives face, right? Like, if Elon gets this horrifically bad reputation, why would he care? If you're just a regular old CEO, I mean, maybe you've made a lot of money, but maybe you haven't and you need another job. And if you have killed a company by taking the wrong tack because you didn't do your homework, you're not getting another job.
Don't be so sure of that. I know a lot of dumb money out there that'll still give you a lot of money to start a company.
Let's Damn it, real. Tyler, stop killing my dream of karma.
I know. I'm such a voice of reality.
Adam Newman.
Yeah, exactly. Adam Newman. Well played.
Oh, geez. Yeah, he's in real estate again. He's got money again. Oh man. All right. Let's we gotta wrap here pretty soon. So let's pick out some of the best ones here. I think number 29 is kind of related to what we're talking about, this herd mentality. But this is something I learned reading a book called Biology. There's a guy involved in advertising and marketing who is supposedly the first person to actually do brain scans and things like that when using different marketing tactics and showing people advertisements. And one of the things he learned from that, and one of the big takeaways from this book, is that what people say is not what they do. And that sounds rather obvious, but once you understand that rule, changes how you put together surveys, changes how you read market data, how you use it. And this is just yet another example of that, where a survey said 27% of people said they would hand over their unlocked phone to somebody who just asks, to privately look at someone's phone with access to all the data and apps and stuff. And so only 27% said they would do this, when in fact they carried out the experiment. 98% of people did, because social pressure is a real thing.
No comment, because quite frankly, no surprise.
Yeah, I mean, it's why phishing works.
Yeah. Didn't we learn anything from the pandemic? You don't let dirty people touch your stuff.
Reminds me of the situation where researchers were giving out candy bars for passwords, and people would sell the password.
Chocolate for passwords, yep.
I would totally sell Adrian's password for a chocolate bar.
You would not. You hate chocolate.
Yeah, but I don't really care about Adrian's password, so I'd still do it.
That's how little regard he has for my security. Thanks, man. Thanks.
You're welcome, man.
Oh, wait a minute. We did not cover what day it is today. You missed that.
Yeah, I thought it was Old Stuff Day.
Old Stuff Day. Yeah.
What is it?
So we forgot.
Is there another day?
No, that's it. It was I think it's literally
Old Stuff,
called.
That's right. It was that non-memorable Old Stuff Day.
It's Old Stuff Day. Out with the old and with the new.
That's when we almost stopped the podcast because we need to be replaced by younger hosts. Let's see here.
I'm so old I forgot.
See, exactly. We've proven that we need to be replaced. Yeah, I thought it was funny that even hackers are getting laid off by crime groups. So even just backs up the the observation that cybercrime is organized enough that it really runs like a business, that this market downturn has even resulted in layoffs for cyber criminals and cybercrime groups. So not a whole lot to talk about there. It's just it's a funny news item to reflect on. Let's see. I've got a story in here, number 32, is about prompt engineering being a thing. So that's, I think that's important to understand for folks, even though it's not directly security related. Anytime we see new technology come in, security folks have to understand it. And right now, people are kind of giggling at it, like, oh, like it's not really a skill. But you get into it and you see what people can get out of some of these AI tools, whether it's artwork or graphic design or copy for a marketing brochure site or something like that. There's definitely some value in people who know how to work the system. Like the example I saw is, somebody saying, because apparently ChatGPT is really bad at math, but there are AI bots out there that are specifically good at math. Like ChatGPT will just make some shit up and try and convince you that it's the truth. Even outside math, like facts and stuff like that, you cannot trust it. So there's apparently a way to just tell ChatGPT that it's bad at math and to use this integration instead anytime it's given a math problem. So it goes pretty deep with how you interact with these chatbots, how to optimize the prompt, how you're asking for things. It definitely looks like it's going to be a real skill, and people are already hiring folks for 200, 300K as prompt engineers. And this is actually an interview with somebody who does this. So it's really interesting to read through the interview, and he talks about what his job is like, what kind of stuff he does. As a prompt engineer.
I'll do some prompting and some engineering for 300K a year.
Do it. Let's see, what else? I think there was some good stuff at the end here. We've got cybersecurity labels coming soon. I'm actually scheduling somebody for us to interview on the podcast talking about IoT certifications for security. That looks really cool. There's an organization that really goes in depth on secure boot, on all these like nitpicky little details of what the manufacturer's done in terms of security, and certifies it at different levels based on what they've done. So don't want to dive too deep into that, because we'll have somebody on to talk about that pretty soon in the next month or so. LastPass got way worse. Maybe that's more of a Paul Security Weekly discussion, but it got way, way worse. Like, I didn't think it could get worse, but it's worse.
Oh yeah, I got the email today. I'm not on LastPass anymore, but yeah, I got the email today and I just deleted it. It's a train wreck.
It's got to be a huge hit to the revenue at this point. I don't know anybody still willingly using LastPass. If they can move, they've moved or in the process of moving right now. So yeah, that's going to be rough on them.
It was actually, I'll put a plug in. It was actually pretty easy to move. I thought it was going to be a pain in the neck, and it took me all of like 10, 15 minutes.
Yeah, and I hear PSW did cover that in depth. So go ahead and check out last night's Paul Security Weekly show if you want to hear somebody dive into the LastPass latest LastPass issues a little bit deeper. And I think it's time for our squirrel stories, and then we'll wrap. So two of these things I think are really cool innovations, and one is just funny. So 4748, I think it's really cool that an inventor from Kenya created smart gloves that translate sign language into audible speech, which is really cool. We've got a lot of translation on devices now. My Pixel does a really good job of real-time translation that I got to try out when I was in Sao Paulo a couple months ago. But sign language is not something my Pixel can translate at all. So I think that's fascinating that these gloves can tell what's being signed and can translate that into audible speech. And then 48, this is the second case I've seen where cancer diagnosis can be done super easily with just like a doctor visit, like you would, find out if you have the flu or not. Almost that easy. The first was with a blood draw, and now this one is using urine. You can do early detection of cancer, which is always cool to see.
Early detection done easier is fantastic.
Something to get excited about.
Absolutely.
And then the final
jokes
one
can
here.
be made about that. That's really cool.
No, that's why I said those two are innovations I was really excited about. So,
Yeah.
I mean, there's still squirrel stories in the spirit of squirrel being distractions, non sequiturs, outside what we normally talk about. And the final one that is kind of story is what romance scammers lean on for tricking people out of money, to the tune of, here in the U.S. alone, $1.3 billion in 2021 is how much they were able to trick people out of. And the number, does anybody want to read that? Anybody want to? I'll let somebody else do it. I've been talking a lot.
Read what in particular, Adrian? The romance scammers' favorite line?
Lies. The favorite lines.
Yeah, my favorite one is, I can teach you how to invest. I'm busted. Oh, I love that picture. Well done there, buddy. I appreciate being part of the squirrel imagery now. My favorite one is, I can teach you how to invest, because that's the one that I used to pick up women all the time. It works so well.
Yeah, and the number one item that is used, this isn't necessarily successful. No, this is success. These are things that have worked. So the top thing used that works is, I or someone close to me is sick, hurt, or in jail. So leaning on people's empathy.
Scam? Why is this called romance scam? Because I guess it leans on the empathy side of it. Like, there's nothing.
These aren't opening lines. This is like after you've kind of captured them and you've got their attention. Like they care about you. They give a shit about you at this point. Then this is maybe weeks in, you hit, these guys hit them with the urgency, whatever creates that sense of urgency that gets people to send money.
Yeah, the article says romance scammers tell all sorts of lies to steal your heart and money.
So it's just saying it's empathy. I read romance scammers and I was like, well, really, what does that mean? But then when you look at the bottom one, 3% of them actually were successful with, you can trust me with your private pictures. Spicy take.
You shouldn't trust anybody with your private pictures ever. Not even your phone.
Take private pictures. You shouldn't take them.
Well, that was sort of the implication, but yeah, sorry.
Not even your phone. I get it.
I mean, only marginally more successful is, I'm on an oil rig or ship. I've come into some money or gold, and we've never met, but let's talk about marriage.
That's how.
That's the new prince, the Jordanian prince, or whatever it was. Where was the prince from? Nigeria. I knew it was with Jordanian, Nigerian, same thing. They have princes there who have a lot of money and just want to give it to you in exchange for, $10,000.
Katie, don't make fun of it. That's how I met my wife. I picked her up with a text message about, hey, we've never met, but let's get married.
I was going to say something really mean.
I can't tell if he's serious or not. I can't tell if he's serious or not.
I'm not going to. I actually did get one of those texts yesterday. I got a, hey, how are you? Just following up. Who are you? We talked the other day. Who are you? I'm just following up on our conversation that we had. Who are you?
Sounds like a chat bot.
Yeah.
No, he came back and said a couple of other things, and I said, you have one more chance. You tell me who you are.
It came back, and it was really.
So you have one more chance. You tell me who you are, or I block you. Oh, don't block me. We've met in person. Goodbye.
See you later. Now your boyfriend can't get in touch with you at all. That's a bummer.
Yeah.
Well, if I could end with a song that wouldn't get us blocked on YouTube, it would probably be Eleanor Rigby. Just thinking about all the lonely people that fall for these romance scams. It's got to be a lot of them to get to 1.8 billion.
That's a lot. One of the things I found interesting about the article is it said that 34% were paid through cryptocurrency, 27% through bank wire transfer or payment, 7% gift card, 3% was payment app or service, but 28% was other. I want to know what this other is. Like that's a huge amount to be just categorized as other. Was it bags of cash at the grocery store parking lot? Like, what are these others? Were they packing up coupons?
Packing
goods.
Up coupons.
I bet they're goods like iPhones and stuff like that, or like shipping mule type stuff.
Could be. I thought you said kids, like selling your kids. I thought that's what you said. I was like, whoa.
Tyler, don't give away what you're thinking right now.
Real dark.
My next romance technique will be, hey, I know you've never met me, but I'll buy your kids.
I thought you were going to say, but I'll sell you my kid.
Or I'll sell you my kids. Even better.
Yeah, I think watching somebody's kids for them is a winning proposition.
Mine's about to go to college. You can have
them. You better invest in a SPAC.
All
right, Adrian, take us out.
And with that, I think it's time to wrap here. It's been suggested that I could sing the Beatles song, but I don't think I will. We'll do that in the. I get a charge for that. It's amazing. It's just I can't give it away for free. That's the reason. Thanks so much, guys. Tyler, Katie, Sean, for joining me today. Today's been a lot of fun. And a big thanks to everybody watching or listening to this week's episode of Enterprise Security Weekly. We're not going to break on the news segment again soon. We'll see you next week. We got a lot of good interviews lined up. See you then.